So you want to start wedding photography? Here's some things you should know before you begin. All right, let's start with number one. Don't do it. I'm just kidding. Wedding photography is not for everyone. Let's be realistic. It's very challenging. It's very hard. There's a lot of elements to wedding photography that are not like other types of photography. It's a high-paced, high-stress, you got to get it the first time kind of environment. So if after doing your first few weddings, you find out it's just not working for you, don't feel bad. It's not for everyone. I know photographers that are 10 times better than me, and they avoid weddings like the plague, and that's okay. No judgment. There are easily 20 to 30 other categories of photography that you could be amazing at and make tons of money and have a fun time doing it. If you have social anxiety, can't do stairs, don't like directing large amounts of people, or solving problems that are not your fault, then wedding photography may present an extra level of challenge for you. Not that you can't overcome it or do it great, but just giving you a heads up. Now, if you're just trying to make some quick and easy money, only have one kit lens and one battery, then I will say photography is not for you. Please don't jump into doing photography if you expect those three things to work out for you. Now, we'll get into equipment later, but let's get started with number one. Now, before you go out on your own and start charging for weddings, I suggest that you shadow, assist, and or second shoot at least 5 weddings, and preferably with different wedding photographers, because we all have something different to offer and we all do things very differently. So if you second shoot, assist, or shadow, you get a really good, well-rounded view of how it can be done, and then you can find the way that you want to get it done. Now, professional wedding photographers that have been in the game for 10 plus years usually have a small list of trusted, quality, and experienced second photographers that they use on a regular basis. I've got about 3 personal ones that I go to, and they are my actual friends in the photography community. So realize that second shooters are relational based, and you need to establish trust and a relationship with the photographer. Don't just cold message them out of the blue. You've never chatted before, never commented on their photos or asked for help at all, and suddenly you expect them to bring you to a high dollar, multi-thousand-dollar gig and, hope you do a good job. That's usually not how it works. You got to work your way up, build relationships, find photographers that you trust and get along with really well, and of course, ones that you like their style. Second shoot for them, assist them, or just be in the background, ready to get them an extra battery, help you with the timeline and calling out people's names for family photos. You can start small and work your way up. That's the best way to do it. When you jump in and you don't know how deep the water is, that's when you get sued or get a bridezilla and ruin the photos, and it's just not a good experience. And you probably will never want to do wedding photography after that. So work your way in slowly and safely. Lastly, about second shooting, when you are being a second photographer for another wedding photographer who is the actual hired one, you need to discuss image rights and details up front so there's no surprises later. Question number one, can I use the images that I take for my own portfolio and marketing online later? Usually they'll say yes, sometimes they'll say no, and that's okay. If you really want these photos for your own use and that's the biggest priority, then don't work with them. If you're just shooting for experience and to build a relationship with the photographer and with the people at the wedding, then it's still a good gig for you. You're still going to learn a lot and you'll retain the experience that you got. But be sure you have the green light to use those photos later. Most commonly, the lead photographer will say you can use your photos 6 months after the wedding, or after I've delivered the final photos, they're happy with it, I've got a review back and everything's good, then you can edit and post on your own. Be sure you know the rules up front. Tip number 2 is go to styled wedding shoots and or set up a fake wedding photo shoot. These are really great for, one, getting experience and getting used to posing people and taking pictures of the wedding setting, but also you get these amazing photos. Hopefully they're amazing. That's the goal. You want to take amazing photos so that you can use in your marketing online. This will get you to the real brides and the real weddings. You got to do some fake ones up front, some staged weddings. If you have some friends that actually never got wedding photos because they couldn't afford it, offer to shoot it for free as long as they can get dressed up again. Their wedding dress, their wedding suit, or maybe some kind of equivalent. Get them dressed up and do a photo shoot. These are awesome because you can take an hour or two to get killer, precise, really good wedding portraits that you can use online. Wedding day, you might have 15, 20 minutes to do it, and you'll get better as time goes on, but these are great practice. And like I said, marketing material is what you need to get the actual gigs coming up into the future. Tip number 3, look for those couples who cannot afford a photographer. They'll occasionally post, hey, I'm looking for someone that's just starting out or wants to barter, or I have no photographer because I can't afford it. Find those brides complaining about their situation on the bridal Facebook groups and step in and be their savior. Now, you need to be upfront. Tell them, hey, I have not done a wedding. I've only done photography for a year or 2 or less, but I would love to offer this as a gift. Hopefully they come out okay. It's a learning experience for me, but you'll get photos you didn't have before, scotch-free, $0 exchanged. They're most likely going to accept the deal because they're in a bind, they're in a situation. Hey, we don't have money growing on trees. My wedding cost like $2,000 max for everything, including photographer, which I actually traded services for. I did his wedding, he did mine. There's brides out there, there's couples out there that want a cheap deal. They're not looking for the top dollar photographer. They're not looking for great images or artistic everything. They just want a camera there. And you can be that person. That's a great way to, again, get experience, hopefully get marketing photos you can use in the future, and meet actual clients. The wedding party at a wedding is basically a gold mine for possible clients because most of them are not married yet, in younger weddings at least. And those are people that are going to need a wedding photographer in 1, 2, 5, 10 years. Hopefully they'll remember you. So do some free weddings, step in and help people out, and you'll get some weddings booked that you didn't have before. Tip number 4, when you get into the wedding world, you've got to have a timeline. Timeline is key to know where you need to be and when. How much time do you have to wrap up this photo session in the bridal suite to get to the groom's room because he's going to arrive in 5 minutes? You need to know these things. So once you have a actual bride booked or offering free services, bug them a few times politely to get that timeline. If they don't have one, help them make it. Walk through the day realistically with margins in between things so that people can walk or drive, and help them plan out their day so that they know what's going to happen. The other people in the wedding know what's going to happen. And most importantly, you know what the heck's going to happen because you got to be in place with your settings and your gear ready before that moment elapses so that you can capture it right the first time. We don't want redos, right? We want to get it the first time, get it right the first time so you don't got to do it a second time. Now, ideally, bride and groom portraits can be done during golden hour. This is usually not the case because when a bride and groom or even wedding planners plan the wedding day, they're not considering what we have to deal with just natural light outside. Golden hour, it changes throughout the year. Summer is late, winter is early, in between, it's, decent time, but it's always changing. So whenever you book a wedding date, look up, Google that wedding date and look up sunset time and suggest to your couple that you do bride and groom portraits outside before the sun sets. I'd say about 15, 20 minutes before that sun is down, you want to be finishing up your portraits with bride and groom. And of course, before that is wedding party and before that is family. So try to get pictures outside of the best time of day possible. I've done some pretty wacky timelines where people got married really early, like 1 or 2 p.m. We actually did family pictures at the church. Then we went into the party. We went straight to the party, did all the reception stuff. And then later at like 5 or 6 p.m. when it was good lighting, then I took the bride and groom outside. We had 30 minutes to spare with some great photos and most importantly, great lighting to capture that moment, the best way possible. And then we went back in and finished the night. And it's untraditional, but that's okay. The art of photography is sometimes untraditional. Find ways to suggest to your couple to shift that bride and groom photo time later and sometimes earlier in the day to get the best photos possible.
All right, tip number 5 is get a contract.
The wedding contract protects you as the photographer. It also informs the client of what they're getting and what they're not getting. You do not want any surprises later after the wedding or before the wedding day, where they're like, wait, I thought you were doing this, or 2 months after the wedding, where are all these pictures of this thing? I thought you were doing this. No surprises. Spell it all out on the contract. On my contract, the very first page is actually all their contact info, bride and groom. Also, the person who's paying. If that's the situation, I have the payee fill out their info there. And then I have the package also detailed and written out. How much money they're paying for everything. What is their deposit? When is the deposit due? When is the rest of it due? And all that stuff is included, what they're paying for exactly, the number of hours, if there's any additional things like they added a bridal and they added engagement and they want a highlight video, all these things are written out and they agree to it. You also agreed to it too on the contract that that's what's being delivered. And it's great to go back to, a year later when the wedding's coming up, because sometimes weddings book you a year out or 2. You go back to the contract, oh yeah. This is what, I forgot about this. It was added last minute. This is on the contract. We're good to go. So get a contract. Don't write it yourself. Get a legal professional or buy a legit solid one online and modify it where you need to. But get all the package information and personal contact information written down on that contract. You'll thank me later. All right, tip number 6, when you do start charging for wedding photography, decide on an hourly rate that makes sense for you. This hourly rate will increase every year as you increase in skill and equipment. But remember this, for 1 hour of shooting at a wedding, you are still working about 2 or 3 additional hours at home, importing, exporting, editing, spending time contacting back and forth before the wedding when you're planning stuff, driving 1 hour there and 1 hour back. There's a lot of time that goes into wedding photography. It's not just 4, 6, or 8 hours of work. It's usually 10, 20, or sometimes 30 hours of total work all added up together, spread out over the course of a month or 2, depending on how fast you want to edit things. So once you decide on that hourly rate, whether it's $100 to $600 an hour, use an Excel sheet to do some math for you and make up some packages. where you can have a 3-hour package, a 6-hour package, and a 12-hour package. And there's kind of incentives along the way up. So it's not just a linear craft, but actually they are actually saving money as they upgrade to the higher packages because there's things thrown in. Your hourly rate is discounted as the package gets bigger and longer, things like that to help them upgrade, to coax them to get the bigger package. And they're gonna get more bang for their buck. Now, concerning money, you've got to be paid in full before the wedding day actually happens. You don't want them carrying around hundreds of dollars in cash or a check. Someone's trusted with that. They lose it, they get drunk, they're gone. You don't get paid. Or the bride and groom says, well, we'll pay you when we get the photos back to make sure we're happy with them. Walk away as fast as you can from those couples. They're not worth the time and stress. That's a nightmare waiting to happen. Be paid in full before the wedding happens. The way that I do it is I require 1/3 of the total price to be the non-refundable deposit to reserve the wedding date for them. Once they sign the contract and pay that 1/3 amount, they're set in stone. I'm their photographer, they're my client, and that's that. The other 70% is due no later than 1 month before the wedding. So 1 month before the wedding happens, I get paid in full. I'm ready to serve them, ready to rock and roll, and we don't have to worry about money. Those last few days before the wedding, even weeks, are very stressful for the bride and groom usually. And them worrying about paying you an additional $500 to $3,000, you don't want them to do that. And you don't want to be bugging them either because they're busy. What if they just don't get back to you and don't pay you? Yeah, just get the money out of the way as early as they can. Set up a reasonable payment plan. I don't require amounts to be paid at certain months. I just say, hey, pay however fast or slow you want, as long as it's done 1 month before the wedding day. In 18 years of doing weddings, I've never had any complaints about that, and it's worked really well. Tip number 8, get some external hard drives. They're not that expensive. You can get USB hard drives for $50 to $150 of varying size and quality. Get one or preferably 2 and back them up every week. Every time you import a wedding, before you even touch those photos, back them up onto that external hard drive. So they're on your computer hard drive, and now they're safe on an external hard drive, which when you're done, you unplug it, put it somewhere safe. And then maybe every month you double that to the other hard drives. You have 2 copies that are external and 1 copy that's inside your laptop. That's a good starting point for a backup system. It's not foolproof and it's not perfect, but it's better than just having your photos on a mobile laptop, which can get dropped, stolen, or hacked. Tip number 9, if you don't have the equipment for the wedding, fear not, you can always rent it for cheap. There are rental companies that are international as well as local. You can easily get a $3,000 lens for $50 for 1 or 2 days. And that's going to increase your photo quality and your experience and knowledge up exponentially. So consider renting, include that fee into the package price. You don't have to tell them, hey, this extra $100 is for the rental. They don't need to know that. Just include that price in your package and don't make a big deal about it because it's helping you get better photos of their wedding day and they'll appreciate that in the end. Now, as time goes on and you begin to either save up money or make money from weddings, you'll need to get to a point where you have a trinity of lenses. What is that? It's 3 lenses that cover the full focal length of a typical wedding. Now, the normal trinity of lenses is pretty high dollar. It's a lot of money, but there are cheaper options. So the typical traditional trinity, as far as I understand, is a 24-70, 2.8, a 50, 1.2 or 1.8, and a 70 to 200, 2.8. Now, there are even more expensive versions of that now that are f2, much brighter and faster. You don't need that right now, especially if you're just starting out. But those lenses alone that I just listed will run you up a few $1,000s. So here's my cheaper alternative to a wedding trinity. And this is actually what I use and have used now for about 10 years. I have a 16-35, 2.8. It's the version 2, so it's older. And of course it costs less, still works awesome. It's a good wide range because it goes all the way to 16 millimeters. You can get a small room or a large church and make it look epic, great for group photos. 16-35 is an absolute must for weddings in my opinion. My second lens I use is the 50mm f1.8. Yeah, the $120 one. I use that every photo shoot I do. It's my starting and my ending lens for most shoots and weddings. I just love it. It's fast, it's cheap, it's lightweight. Can't beat those 3 things. The next lens I use, instead of a fancy 70-200, 5-pound zoom lens, which it's way heavier than it looks. Instead of that, I use a 100mm macro lens. So 100mm is pretty decently zoomed in. I can be in the back of a wedding and still get a full body photo with a couple up front. It's 2.8, so it works in low light situations, and it doubles as a macro lens, which allows me to take epic photos of rings, flowers, headshots, emotions, close-ups, all those beautiful romantic photos that I love taking. 100mm is great. It's not that heavy, it's not that big. All 3 of these lenses fit in lens pouches on my waist, so I have them with me at all times. All right, tip number 11, you're gonna need to learn flash. Stop using that pop-up flash in your camera. It's trash. The direct light is really ugly. It's not strong, and it blinds people. Instead, buy a speed light you can connect onto the top of your camera. Don't worry, there are very cheap options out there. Yongnuo has a flash that I used for many years. It costs 60 friggin' bucks. You can't get cheaper than that with that kind of quality. It's great. The better brand, of course, is Godox. That's what I use now. But Yongnuo has some really great, cheap entry-level flashes. Get them and learn them. So when you put that speed light on top of your camera on the hot shoe connection, don't face it forwards towards people. Face it upwards or backwards or sideways so that it will bounce off of white ceilings or white walls. If you don't have that, then you got to do direct flash, or the better option is learn to do remote flash. Learning both is really the best. Bounce flash is amazing for receptions and some portraits, but also remote or wireless flash. It's an amazing way to upgrade the quality of your photos by getting that flash off of the direct axis of your client and camera lens and getting it at a 45 or a 45 downwards. You can get really beautiful shadows and shape. And of course, light up scenes that would otherwise be terrible lighting. Weddings have the worst lighting ever. Even venues that cost $10,000, they did not plan the lighting for photography and videography. They just didn't. It's not their job. It's our job to compensate for their bad job. So bring light, learn flash, bounce flash, direct flash, God forbid. It's not my favorite, not my style. Or even better, remote off-camera flash. It's amazing, and it doesn't have to cost a lot. You just got to find the right options out there and get good at it, because your photos will increase in quality exponentially. All right, 2 more tips. Hopefully this video isn't getting too long, but this is some really good gems here. If you made it this far, I can tell you really want to do wedding photography and do it right. And I hope you're writing down notes and take all this stuff to heart. So tip number 12 is get Lightroom Classic. You can pay $10 a month and get Photoshop and Lightroom Classic together. Those are the best photo editing programs combined. Lightroom I love because it is great at handling large amounts of photos. Weddings will be large amounts of photos. At a long wedding, I'll take 2,000 to 3,000 photos sometimes. I know it's a lot, but Lightroom is awesome because you can batch edit. I can select 1,000 photos of the same lighting and edit them all instantly. That is amazing. You can't do that with Photoshop, not as easily. Trust me, you don't want to do batch editing in Photoshop, but Lightroom is amazing at handling large quantities of photos. You can also cull them, which means, Xing the bad ones and keeping the good ones. You can narrow down that 2,000 down to 800 quality, unique photos. And that's what I do, is I X out the bad ones and I keep the good ones that are left. Those are the ones I edit. Those are the ones I deliver and nothing else. I don't give raw photos. I edit each photo, and it doesn't actually take that long because I'm usually editing photos in batch using Lightroom Classic. Select those photos, turn on your sync switch, edit away, and all photos will be updated instantly. It's great. Finally, you'll use Lightroom to export those raw photos as finished edited JPEGs, and those are the files that you'll be delivering to your client, which brings me to the last and final point. Use an image delivery service to get those photos to your client. There's a number of them out there that are cheap. Some may be free. I haven't looked into that, but I use Pass. Pass has been around for 10 plus years. It's a really great website to deliver large amounts of photos in a very nice organized gallery. And no, this is not a promotional video. They're not paying me for this, although they should, because I love Pass. I always tell people about it. It's a very easy to use website. There's also a Pixieset, which is basically a copycat of that. There's SmugMug, and there's a number of others out there that create a very nice professional and isolated gallery for your client to view their photos, share their photos, and download the photos, and even order prints and make you a little extra money if you push that. So look into image delivery websites. You can pay as low as $5 to $15 a month and get something out there to be able to store. Also works as a bit of a backup and deliver those photos to your clients in a reliable way. So hopefully you got something out of this video. Let me know in the comments down below if I missed something or if something that I said stood out to you. But thanks for watching this video. Hopefully you come back soon. Have a great week.